Okay, I guess time for an update. I'm going to talk about Fortran programs and package source, and I'm going to talk about DosBOX, using that, and hopefully I'll be able to cover sound, at least using package source, and then just some of the various issues that can come up with package source and some of the history of the Fortran, stuff like that. Um, so, in my first go about this thing, I was ready to give up because I just didn't at all have any sound. I mean, at all. It isn't perfect, but it's working. So let's show something that's kind of fun from years ago. Why not? So this is what I'm going to run is DOSBox that I built, and it's running inside of Haiku, and I was able to copy in a really old game. I mean, a very old game, probably from around, 1991 or something like that. And some of these games were probably made in 1991, maybe 1990 or 1989 or whatever. It was a DOS program. I haven't gone and installed DOS here at all. The only bad thing about DOSBox, or negative side of it, is that in general it doesn't really support printing. Otherwise, the presence of DOSBox kind of, even though it's using some ancient software, it does open up some possibilities for it to be used. Word processing and, all sorts of things. Back in the day when DOS was big, people had programs to do all sorts of things, and that included stuff you need to do in the office, including preparing tax returns and stuff like that. If I wanted to, I probably could even load up one of my old tax programs from like 1990 or 91, but I guess I'll just start this out. Oh, up arrow doesn't work, and then I'll talk about the configuration of it. Now, the sound isn't perfect, as you can tell. Wow, 1987. Alright, then they want you to do a quiz. The only thing about the keyboard is this part on the right-hand side. The numbers keypad isn't working, so. Of course, I have to pass the test to be able to play the game. Which was all part of the joke. Aldo has since remade this game. It was crowdsource funded sometime back in, just a few years ago, actually. Now, over here you can see it saying that sound is a bit out of sync or whatever. The keyboard works over that. Walk around. Now, I'm curious about is the mouse, actually, because there is mouse, but this game was never really designed to use a mouse all that much, in all honesty. I remember escape gets this menu to come up. Arrows seem to be working. I just turn the sound off, it responds. Sound on, okay. Might have to use the jukebox again to get it to start. Anyway, so what did I do here? I'm in a GCC4 environment, as I have been. I built this using package source, patches that I made versus package source packages. This isn't the first. Obviously, this is not the first time DosBOX has been used. I really pretty much did my own patching here. The only thing I didn't do a very clean patch on is this part that was trying to use X11, and I wasn't interested in using X11. I was interested in using the terminal, and this actually has a somewhat of a native feel here. It actually started up its own window, which is kind of cool. It has an SGL background, so I think that's part of the whole deal, and maybe glue or gluts involved. So just like Foo Billiards, but this is running through another emulation layer called DosBOX. And as I mentioned earlier, DosBOX really doesn't print. So if you want to do word processing with the old WordPerfect program or Microsoft Word from the DOS days, which would be pre-1995 software, if you had it, you could, but you probably wouldn't really be able to print. If this were DOS-EMU, you'd be able to print. So this opens up some possibilities. It feels like we're moving forward in time, or I'm moving forward in time with this OS. I mean, there are obviously fancier games that have been used and ported over and all that other stuff without an emulation layer. But it's kind of cool to see how it just opens up all the possibilities to the DOS games. There's some good archive sites out there. There are some groups that have gotten together with the aim of taking action to make sure these old games survive, because of course the source code was never released, and it probably doesn't exist anymore actually. So in fact, in the case with Al Lowe, they didn't have the source code, they rewrote it. I don't think they had, as far as I remember reading his blog when he was talking about it, they didn't have it. Of course, the graphics are much better in the newer version, but that's a whole other ball of wax. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk about different things that I did that are not really standard, right? They might not be different. Number one, I use package source, but you don't have to use package source. There is a recipe in Haiku Portal, and I didn't try it, at least recently. I may have tried it a couple months ago. I'd never gotten this far. I'd never gotten past the keyboard issues after the build, and so I kind of gave up on it. Even my own build and the one from Haiku Porter, same keyboard issues that I was having. And in addition to that, yeah, that was pretty much it. That pretty much stopped everything. And I also didn't have a way to get DOS programs into Haiku very easily, because I'm in VirtualBox right now, and I'm not so sure about being able to mount, say, a CD or a USB stick inside the Haiku VirtualBox, because the guest editions, if you do install them, they're somewhat limited. The guest editions are kind of sitting there ready and waiting to be updated at whatever moment people decide to do this and go ahead and get it working. But since I have Samba, I'm able to copy stuff into the Samba share. Haiku is now acting as a Samba server in this case. So I have a whole archive, a lot of games sitting around various places. So my own personal archive. So I just copied in the games, and here it is. I've gone over how to set up Samba on a different video. Basically, you could use my patches from package source to do that. and or you could bring them in if you know how to make a recipe for Haiku Porter, um, and make a recipe for Samba and its dependencies, which include a database program called TDB and something else that escapes my mind. Okay, I'm going to end up loading this thing up to Git and the patches, right? So if you happen to download the DosBOX game, you know, how would you use it? Well, the package format, first of all, you need all the dependencies installed in a structure that's a system structure. And you want the binary for DosCMU to behave consistently with the other programs that it's going to rely on. So, in fact, I'll get into that later. Right now, just the simplest thing to do is if you don't want to, I don't think you don't really want to just download the target for DosCMU. You're going to want to download also the target. You're probably going to want to bootstrap package source. And then you're going to need to download. Let me look at the database and see what this thing actually relies on from package info. In fact, I didn't think about that part before I did this. Now, if you wanted to manually look at the package database, which is a little bit more information, I mean, you're using package source. It's and if you happen to bootstrap the same way I have, and this course is in Haiku, it's basically in your package directory in whatever system you're at. I mean, say if you're in Dragonfly BSD, it may be user local package. NetBSD would be user local package. Haiku happens to be boot home package. And then it's in the var subdirectory, the db subdirectory, and the package subdirectory. And if you have a graphical user interface, let's see, let's scroll. So here's DosBOX, and I'm just going to look at there's a lot of good information here. It's got all the build information, maybe end up being important. One of these has a okay, I believe these are the dependencies. So you need SDL sound, SDL PNG, SDL net digest comes when you bootstrap. DRI2 proto, GL proto, damage proto, X proto, fixes proto, XEXT proto, input proto, KB proto, XKB proto, and these three other things: XF86 video mode proto, XF86 drip proto, libPCIe access, render proto, render proto. Okay, if you have all those things installed inside the package source system after you've bootstrapped package source, which is a different topic, but I went over that in one of the earliest videos I did on this subject. In fact, the latest ones have only been on this subject, so if you go to the first one that starts talking about Haiku or package source, you'll see how to, bootstrap. Then once you're bootstrapped, then you'll be able to do a package add, and the package add program is in the boot home package, well, for Haiku, boot home package SBIN, and it's called PKG_ADD. So if you download all those, I don't know, 10 or 15, target zip files that'll be stored up at Git, and I'm pretty sure I have them all up there. Then you would, say, place them in your home directory, open up the terminal, do package add space, and then the name of the target zip file. And if it tells you it needs something else, and it might, and you might have to end up downloading more stuff from from Git, because actually some of these other things that I've read off might have their own dependencies. You basically you have to work your way through that. I don't have a fast track to the GitHub, okay, at this stage. Then you'll have an installed DosEmu. Now you got to get it working right, or at least as well as you can. So there are two things that I did. When you first start DosEmu up, what'll end up happening is that it won't really, you'll go in here. First of all, you have to have a directory that you're going to put this stuff. It usually starts out with a Z drive, and the Z drive is really is the contents of some files that are located somewhere in the installation area. What you want to do is create a C drive. It's like a virtual C drive. So in your home directory, you just, in my case, I just created a folder called DosBOX drive, as if it were one word. And I noticed you have to run DosBOX the first time, and when you do that, you just let it die after that. It's a little bit rickety the first time it goes, I'll tell you that much. And then it'll create a .dosbox folder. And inside of it, it'll create a sample DosBox 0.74 comp file that is full of stuff, and there's only a few things that I actually changed. One of those is the keyboard layout, but that really didn't solve the problem that I had. And the person that had found the solution to the problem that I had posted it on November 7th, 2012. His name is Giovanni Mugnai, I think. I remember in the brief Italian that I tried to learn, the G I thought was silent, so maybe Mugni, Giovanni Mugni, or something like that. So he found out that if you set the use scan codes equals false in this directory here, that your keyboard will work. Now I still did the keyboard layout equals US 103. Whether you need that or not, or if you're in a different country, you have a different keyboard layout, try something else. So basically what you can do is just open this thing up with PE and then just do a search. Find the term keyboard layout, put it in the find box, find it, and then change it, and then use scan codes, and right here I changed that to false. And there's one other setting I did. I thought it was going a bit too fast, and I remember putting this number in, so I'm just going to look for it. It's called cycles, and I got this actually from the DosBox webpage. It seems like things are going too fast. Just set the number of cycles manually, which basically you're setting your CPU speed. Another thing that I did is I followed the configure options that are used actually in Haiku Porter. It's I think it's disable. Well, I put it over here in my settings, so I might as well just look at it. It's disable dynamic core. So if you're gonna build this from the command line, you would do .configure space / disable -- dynamic - core, as if it were one word, and then that helps. The cycles, all those things, those are things that you would set in the configuration file. And then once you're done with that, you're good. So those are the things you need to do, basically. Let me just make sure I didn't forget about anything that was in this. No, I don't think I did. So those are the 3 things that I changed, and it's working stuff like that. The only thing I really couldn't do that I would like to be able to do, of course, is, I only have a server here. I don't have a Samba server. I don't have a Samba client, although I probably would be able to browse the network if I had a user interface, which is probably a better word to use than just interface. So I haven't found a package to compile that would use Samba's native backend stuff to be able to see the network, because it's there, it exists. I've seen the network from the command line. I would like to be able to mount, a network drive and then be able to save my stuff on a network from here, but, at this stage, I'm not really complaining. And I don't think mounting a share would really... I haven't heard anything about, or I don't know anything about. I don't think that Haiku has a module for mounting a Samba share from somewhere else and placing it at a mount point within your own file structure. But it uses kind of the same principle that DosCMU does whenever you do mount something. That's a whole different subject. Okay, so now I'm going to go into Fortran. And, of course, Fortran, a lot of the time, or one of the comments that I heard when I was talking about this to someone that really isn't much of a computer user, but he'd heard of Fortran, and he said, oh, that's pretty old. Well, maybe not necessarily, but I'll talk about where some of the Fortran programs seem to appear and the small amount of progress I've been able to make towards getting these things to work, be able to compile in Haiku. And by small, I mean out of the handful that I've tried, I've only been able to get one to compile. So, by default, when you use, and I hope to get the sound next. So by default, when you use, at least when you use package stores, and you try to compile a program that is written in Fortran, it'll say that you need something called G95 to be able to compile the program. And of course, just to make things clear, I'm trying to compile everything. I'm not saying, oh, I'm not going to use that, so I'm just trying to compile everything I can. Trying to patch everything I can and load up everything I can. Whether I'm never going to use it, doesn't matter. Someone else might want to use it. The package was made for a reason. Someone might have a use for it. That's what I do. So getting back to this, so I want to figure out how to get these Fortran programs to compile, and what would happen is I would do the usual thing, change directories, go in there and start the compilation process for one of these biology programs. Probably if I look at which one did I? Mopac. There's one called MOPAC. And I just type the usual bmake install, and then it would go through this thing, checking dependencies, and suddenly it would start to want to compile something called G95. And it would fail every time, with the result that Haiku hadn't been ported over yet, basically. So I didn't know what to do about this. So what I just decided to look and see if I could choose another compiler to try to build the program. It turns out GCC, I think, either could compile this, but GCC has many parts to it. Or there's some other program that comes when you bootstrap package stores called F77. I'm not sure if F77 is part of the whole GCC. But nonetheless, that's what you have to use, and that's what used to be used a long time ago, before a change was made, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Now, I will say that the change was probably a lot better for most of the package source users. The exception being for those operating systems that have had package source ported over to it, but have not had G95 ported over to it. And the people that use those operating systems tend to complain about the fact that G95 keeps coming up, but not too much. The NetBSD and package source mailing list are rather quiet, and most of the users are pretty technically competent. So, very technically competent. So competent they don't need next window when their operating system installs. They know what to do from there. Getting back to this, I couldn't find any guidance, anywhere, as to how to use some other Fortran compiler. I just saw an announcement by someone who said, okay, starting with this release in this quarter, sometime around 2009, we're going to be using G95 for Fortran. And there was like a colloquy between someone that was in a system that didn't have G95 and was saying, well, hey, how are we going to do it? We don't have G95, and something like that. And the guy said, well, we're not going to put packages in place that use a version of Fortran that's higher than F77. I don't know what F77 means. Eventually I might find out. But, so then there was a discussion as to how to bring the settings back to the way they were, and the last word was, well, that's incorrect. And then there's no real answer as to what the correct way was. I don't even know if this is the correct way. But the implication of what was said during the discussion is that once you pick a Fortran compiler, you want to use the same one, if that's even possible. So if you choose F77, you got to stick with F77. And that may be an oversimplification. It may be that even if you stuck with F77, there may be some issues here and there. I'm not quite sure. So I looked at I did a grep in the make directory and package source, and I saw there's a folder called compiler, and inside that there's actually a Fortran text file, which you don't need to change anything, but I noticed there was a variable in there called ignore G95 equals yes. In fact, maybe I should go in there. And it wasn't that straightforward. There's something called Fortran, there's a G95, and there's an F2C, and I think here's the G95.make. So I got this highlighted. So what would happen is as soon as any Fortran program would try to compile, it would just say, okay, we're going to use G95. Do you got it? Okay, you don't got it. Let's start building it. Let's download it. Let's start, And as far as Haiku is concerned, there was one discussion about whether G95 had been ported over to Haiku or if the main developers had any interest in it. I don't know a lot about G95. In fact, the only thing I do know is what I'm going to talk about in the context of package source. So, but there wasn't. The guy that came by was just trying to see if people had any interest, and he kind of concluded that they didn't have enough interest to actually take action to port G95 over to Haiku. But the people, the Haiku developers weren't against it. They just weren't seeking it out, wanting to compile it actively. Okay, so to this day, as far as I know, G95 has not been ported over. Now, if G95 is a part of GCC4, then okay, it has. I just don't know how to use it. So, keep all that stuff in mind. But if it's a separate package, like I think it is, at least package source represents it as being that, then we don't have it. So, what do we have to do to get it to not try to build G95 and fail, lest we port over G95 to be able to to use Mopac or something like that. Well, here's the variable I'm talking about. This ignore underscore G95 equals yes. If you basically, you can, if you wanted to, it may be the best approach, you could just put that in your make.conf file. I happen to at least try, unless it's just ridiculous, like every single package is going to need the variable. I usually don't globally apply settings like that. But there's nothing wrong with it, except that you may not get as good as results, or you may not get as good as information out of it. So what I've done in my own settings is I actually have I have a make.conf file that consists of a lot of other make.conf files. It's up at Git, and by the way, and if you went to my Git and you download the repository, it's in the patches repository, but there's a settings folder, and if you dig down into the settings folder, into the etc. directory, and into the package source directory, like I have it here, and these settings are for Haiku. They're definitely for Haiku. My patches are definitely for Haiku. Why do as a side note, why do I say that? Because some of the patches I do really shouldn't be applied on other operating systems, though, you know. So I'm not that great of a patch artist yet to make them fit in all of, you know, most of them will work on every operating system, but some of them won't work on every operating system. But getting back to this, if you go into my patches repository, there's a folder called settings, and the settings, there's an etc. directory that starts that's there, and there's a package source directory, and inside the package source directory are the latest settings that I've loaded up, and I usually load them up every day. I do something, for the most part, every day I do some work on this. This Samba directory is not really, this is not the Samba settings that I use, but I have it there, so I'll end up loading it up when I go into Git. Under the package area, there's I have a package options category. In some cases, package options are just basically spelled out to, and they're set up and they're designed to be responsive to the way the NetBSD makefile, you know, what Haiku calls a recipe, has. And in some cases, the makefile doesn't really address what I want, so I've had to do my own stuff. Up here, let's see, is this the right category even? And this is 4, nor G95 equals yes, so now it's not in here. Well, I guess I'm going to have to do a grep to figure out where I put this damn thing. Compiler is what I did. Compile tool. That's what I did. So right now it's grown. It's only been in for a couple days that I've known about this setting. And basically I've got ignore G95 equals yes. And I also have, I'm including the live tool Fortran in the build link, and I have more things to talk about. The end result, though, is that the live tool Fortran is broken. It does not work. The script for Fortran, because it's actually a script, it actually had embedded in it linkage to the math library, as if every operating system is going to need that, and that's not really true. So I actually had to modify that to get Mopac to build. I've tried looking at this live tool script, and so I may end up actually taking out this, or just commenting out that, so I disable it. Because I don't want to disable, the only working thing I have here so far is Mopac. I'm gonna try the other ones, but the result isn't really all that great, even though I was able to get one thing to build. Um, it it would just a lot of these Fortran packages want to use library tool, so now I got to figure out how to get it to not use library tool. Fortran, it's a different library tool than the regular library tool. Once I figure that out, then I'll have a chance to get it to build with however the Fortran compiler ends up showing up and being used on this system. And I haven't natively compiled GCC, so there is a Fortran compiler or capabilities that comes with Haiku. I am also going to upload the packages, and as they get better, I'll replace them, and as the patches get better, I'll replace those too. But part of the problem of what's going on is there's some Unix-centric decisions that are being made, and or NetBSD-centric decisions that have been made for these programs. And so things aren't really being found, and so I'm having to dig a little bit deeper to get these things to work, and sometimes I can't really figure out what to do, even though I've gotten fairly far in the process. So pretty much that's how I dealt with it. So the bad news is that until the older Fortran tools are made better, so to speak, package source probably isn't the best place to try to compile Fortran packages. I would almost scratch those off the list, and almost, it's not impossible, and someone might be able to have the skill and want to put the time into getting all of them working, but those are pretty much out. The GTK2 programs are probably all out of the picture as being available too. And I guess this is the third subject I didn't mention to start with. Because, and this is just going off of belief, I don't know. I mean, the word is that the shared memory stuff hadn't been implemented yet. In Haiku, I didn't know what it meant. Did it mean the header hadn't been produced? Does it mean that the kernel doesn't support it? Is it a combination of both? Or is it something I haven't even thought of? But so far, the best evidence I have is the kernel doesn't support the shared memory. But I know it's not perfect evidence, and I know that could be an incorrect conclusion. So without the shared memory, and the shared memory headers that work, and the ability to build packages with the shared memory in it all the way up past GTK2, I can have any GTK programs. And I'd gotten as far as Pango, and Pango finally said, hey, undefined reference. I've also had a very strange, that I have not solved, issue come up with one of the packages that's in the emulators category, and this is with undefined symbols. And so I actually can't tell, I don't know what the hell's going on, and it may be happening in some other packages too. There may be some other completely different dynamic that someone's doing something and approaches this problem from a completely different angle. It's probably the only way it's going to be solved, because there's no real straightforward answer as to what's going on. So usually, in my experience up until today, with unresolved symbols, either, there's one package builds and it needs to use the library from some other package, or a feature or something from another package, and it expects it, and then during the linking stage it doesn't find it, it says, unresolved symbol. That's what happened with shared memory. So Pango, I guess, was able to tell the system didn't support shared memory, so it didn't build with the shared memory. And then when it tried to link with Pango, which actually was built with the shared memory definitions embedded in it, because I had used the header that's in the development area, It said undefined references to shared memory. So I went back and I took shared memory out of everything, going all the way back as far as I can go. I finally got a build of X11. I haven't, since I did my last thing on X11, I haven't even tried to work on it at all. I'm just going to wait, get back to it eventually. And then I had another experience where the zlib that I had built in package source didn't have any symbol information in it. And apparently wasn't passing it on, so it would just basically say, gives a telephone number like error, and that would be it. It really wouldn't even say what symbol was not defined or anything like that. It would just do, it would just be very, very plain and fail. And until I got my Z library built to have the symbols in it, that problem went away for me. Prior to that, I had to use a copy of the zlib that was provided with Haiku and put it in the package source directory. And that got rid of it temporarily, and then eventually I figured out how to build my own. That was the second situation with unresolved symbols. Now this is the third situation. I have no explanation for it. There's a dependency for emulators called Dynamips, and I am very certain that I have the elf header include, and the elf header is included also. There's only one C file that this thing's trying to compile, and then when it does and it goes to link, it says undefined references to several things that are present in the very elf header that I have gone so far as to locally path and try to link up with that one file, and I've put the quotes around it, and even its own includes, I've also put the quotes around it. So there shouldn't be any reason why, when the compilation takes place, that the headers aren't, or the definitions that are provided by the header aren't being included in the binary that's being built. So I don't know what's going on with that. I've tried a lot of stuff, and if I get an answer to it, maybe, well, of course I'll share it. So anyway, that's where I'm at right now. I'm working through things. I had a breakthrough with sound also. So a couple things. One thing that Diger had pointed out to me is that in the package options, this was a global package option actually. Basically, once I turned off eSound, what this says is that if there's any package at all whatsoever in the entire 11,000 packages amongst the collection, and it wants to use eSound, tell it not to use eSound. Okay, once I did that, I was able to build one of the open source, and I did a video on it. One of the I think I was able to build SDL in the devel directory. Then I was building some other package, and I forget what it was. I think it might have been library OSS, or let me just dig around here in the audio directory. And it could be I forgot to put the BSD makefile in the solutions directory. Now that wasn't it. It was a setting. remember what the hell it was. Let's do a grep for it. Because I've done a ton of different things. So I have under live tools shared. That's kind of weird. We've got two things in there. I got one thing in there twice. Great. Damn it. I don't remember what it was. Well, a little more specific is I know I remember specifically going into one of these and looking at the bottom and it says package requires. And it has a bunch of ... links in there. And one of them wanted eSound. I mean, maybe I could grep for it that way. Yeah, there's a lot to look through. So basically, I just removed that requirement. So there's, if you go in, you look at the BSD make file, and you see towards the bottom, it's got dot include in quotes dot, and then eSound in there. Just get rid of it, because all it does is make your life. Yeah, nothing? That doesn't make any sense. Hopefully I didn't forget to put the setting in there because that wouldn't be too good. Of course I want other people to be able to do what I've done, which is the whole point of this whole thing. Anyway, once I did that, and if and when I do that, it no longer tries to make it build, eSound, which I haven't really built yet. eSound requires port audio, and I got sound, so I'm not really interested in going the eSound route. I'd rather just use the OSS route, and it's not really all that clear. There is a package. It's got a bunch of options for it. I think it's the ALSA package, but I never was able to get it to, in the little looking that I did, I was never able to get it to not try to build eSound eventually. And so, some of these, even though some of these don't have a package option to explain. Some of these don't have the package option to not use eSound. It just, if you're going to use this package, you're going to use eSound because that's the way the makefile's set up in some of these. And so putting that setting up there minus eSound on the global setting doesn't work because it's not listed as a package option in the BSD makefile. So how do I explain that? Yeah, let's go to Alza. Or maybe I won't. Oh, I guess I have to take my word for it. Just the way it is. I thought there might have been some... Because I got this in the solder, and what do I do here with this makefile? Anyway. My settings should work. I think it might be arts. Yeah, okay, arts has options. I'll show you kind of how it works. So this has, you know, package supported options. So on the top of the makefile, if you have somewhere in here, suppose I've seen it before, it has options. Just in one line, and then there's, okay, what is it, in hacks? You got so many different things here. Okay, so this is, okay, here it is. There's suggested options, there's supported options. I frankly don't know what it would mean if I were to get rid of the E sound there. And let's see what he's got here on his global. Of course, nothing there. Some of these defaults are, they might be buried in, you know, the mk.conf. I'm not sure. So I actually don't know. I still don't know that. Actually, I don't know what I would do. So this has been almost rather pointless. I wish I had a better answer. Of course, someone's probably tearing their hair out, wondering what the hell I did. Because theirs isn't working. It would have had to have been something I've built recently. I just built SDL Sound today. I didn't think I'd ever build that. So it had to be LibAO or LibAO OSS. So what the hell's going on here? And all I have that is under LibTools shared. Eventually I might get to the point where I'm able to build eSound, but right now I have that thing turned off. Something tells me that eSound was included in here. I know I have a backup of this package source, so... It's not there though. Anyway, so that's about all I've really done. It says include the libao makefile common. Maybe it's in that thing. Well, I'll tell you that before I built something or other somewhere, I wasn't able to build SDL sound, so I wish I really had a clear bit of knowledge as to how that came out. I guess I could look at the package database and see how that goes. I think it's worth my spending the time to look. I hate as this thing tries to count. All of them, I got 6,000 of them. It wants to count everything before I can move them. Yeah. This is basically a listing of all my packages. Package info queries this directory and makes an index, basically. 2,000 more to go. Let's do it. Another thing that I haven't done is there are some Python builds that I have not had success with. I'm going to try to mark as being Python 34 packages in my settings eventually to try to get some more builds and see if they'll build that way. It's a different issue. Okay, are we done counting? Okay. Okay, so it wanted all this stuff here. Basically, I guess I just chose to use libao, and it worked. Or it may be that once you get SDL built, you can build SDL sound, and to build SDL, you have to have the eSound disabled, otherwise it won't build, at least without doing some major work. Okay, so I think I've covered everything I want to cover for now. I'm going to try to keep patching and building things and loading stuff up, but this is a good sign, and I'm not having the issue I had before, and I haven't put anything of my own inside of boot home common non-packaged, any of that stuff. Package source does a good job of embedding the location of the libraries that the binders want to file relative to the executable. So I'm not having the issues I had when I had a hard link between my package source directory and the boot home config non-packaged directory, not common. Okay, done.